Hello, everyone. Welcome to National Review Institute's Buckley Essay Contest winner webinar. I'm Alexander with National Review Institute, the 501c3 nonprofit organization founded by William F. Buckley Jr. to preserve and promote his legacy, support the National Review magazine, and advance the principles of a free society through educational and outreach programs. I'm glad to host this year's webinar featuring our essay contest winner, James Eustis, a student at Washington and Lee University, with his winning submission titled AI Will Destroy Entire Industries, and That's a Good Thing. Our new Buckley Journalism Fellow, Guy Denton, will interview our winner, and then we will open the discussion to audience questions. Please submit your questions using the Q&A button below. Without further ado, let's begin.
Well, thanks so much for that introduction, Alexander. And James, thank you for being here. I'm excited about this. I'm sure everyone here watching and listening is. Why don't we just jump right in why don't we start at the beginning? Tell us a bit about yourself. How did you get interested in politics and ideas? What made you want to enter this essay competition to begin with?
Well, first of all, before I get started with that, I just want to thank you, Guy and Alexander, and the entire National Review Institute team for putting together this competition and bringing me here today. It's an absolute honor and pleasure. As for my background, I was born and raised in Charlottesville, Virginia, where I started to get interested in middle school and high school by serving on various political campaigns in the area, just sort of starting at the bottom with the normal door knocking and phone banking that any high school campaign volunteer will tell you that they are assigned to do. And going from there, starting to get into the realm of talking about the messaging of the campaign and the other more interesting, less repetitive aspects. And so I came to WNL to study, knowing that I wanted to focus on politics. And while I was here, I started getting interested in journalism, which led me to DC last summer, where I interned for Real Clear Politics and spent time with the Fund for American Studies Student Journalism Association. And you asked how I know about this competition and why I entered. TFAS, the Fund for American Studies, certainly is to credit for that. They sent me the link, they recommended it. They recommended that I make a submission, which I did. I did not expect to win, but it was a very pleasant surprise, and it's great to be here.
And you've been reading National Review for a couple of years now, am I right? Why don't you tell us a bit about how you got interested in it and what the magazine means to you and your thinking?
Well, National Review's got plenty of wonderful writers, and I've been reading their articles on and off over the years as I've been interested in politics. One writer in particular I befriended last summer, an intern at National Review. And so that definitely made me pay a lot more attention to the publication starting in the last summer. And since then, I've been impressed by the quality that I've seen in all of the work produced.
So when you saw the essay prompt, were you jumping for joy that, oh, AI, great, that's one of my favorite subjects. I know a lot about that. Or was it something that you had to do a bit more research on initially to get up to speed on and feel comfortable with doing? How interesting is how tell us a bit about how interested you are in AI and how you approached the essay prompt and all of that.
Well, I've been interested in AI simply because I think it's going to be tremendously impactful on my life and the lives of so many other people in my generation and for all generations to come. I have friends that are more on the technical side of AI, studying computer science, doing AI research, and that's where I get my ideas of what the potential of AI is, and then try to translate that into the political world of how are we going to help people have jobs, have employment? How are we going to get through these transitions? How can we maximize human prosperity? Those are the questions that I like to approach from the more political lens of AI. And to more directly answer the start of your question, when I first saw the prompt, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do with it. It took a lot of research and looking into various social issues to decide this is what I think matters and this is what I should research, form an opinion on, and run with.
So if we actually jump into the essay, the full title is AI Will Destroy Entire Industries, and That's a Good Thing. Why don't we start with the thirst part of that, first of all, and then we'll go from there. How exactly is AI likely to affect the workforce? What industries do you think it's going to destroy?
Yeah, I completely agree that that's the place to start because when you're discussing AI, the first point where people disagree is how capable it's going to be. And I've talked to a lot of people that think AI is a fluke and it's not going to have any truly significant impact on the job market. You can see recently the ChatGPT 5 model, didn't get the most stellar reception in the world from a lot of people. And if there's a bell curve of how, not a bell curve, excuse me, if there's a curve of how interested people are in AI and how confident people are that it's going to destroy industries, I'd say we're on the downward sloping part of that curve before it goes up again as we see the true capability. But I don't work in AI development. As I mentioned before, I have friends that do, and the best thing I can do is defer to them as well as what seems to be the industry standard. So less them and more the overall what people that work in AI are saying. And what they're saying, from what I've seen, is that it is a tool and it will not be a total replacement for human labor in the foreseeable future, but it will at least lessen the workload, which then creates less jobs of a lot of entry-level tasks. It seems to be targeting entry-level white-collar work first, and I don't know where it's going to go from there. But for now, I think that it's clear that it has uses. It has uses in almost all industries, and it will be impacting and destroying many of them.
So there's a lot of fear, a lot of chatter in American life and in American political discourse right now about the impact AI is going to have, and people are concerned about how that it might take away many jobs without leaving any kind of framework behind to replace them. You argue in the essay that if we embrace the free market, trust in the free market, then new jobs will emerge, the economy will adjust. This has always been the pattern throughout American history when we've seen new technologies emerge and big new developments like this that shake things up. Why don't you tell us, unpack that a bit for us? Why should we trust that the market alone, without government intervention or other sorts of intervention, can guide us through this turbulent time and create new opportunities for people?
Well, the economic impact of AI is unavoidable. Trying to preserve jobs through protectionist measures like just flat out banning AI in certain industries and the government can do a lot of things that to limit the growth of AI. And doing those things is going to lower productivity, which just creates worse economic outcomes. And the economic outcomes, they're not about numbers. They're about getting people out of poverty. They're about improving material living standards for Americans and for the entire world. And they're about creating the more advanced world that is inevitable as technology advances. On the other side of the coin, if you try to limit it, what we're going to see is we're going to see our competitive advantages in the technology sector disappear. We're going to see automation in other parts of the world, and it will not be a good end result for the United States. And I do think, to answer directly the concern about labor, I do think there are always going to be productive uses for labor, at least in the foreseeable future. Can't look that far out. It's not helpful at this stage. And if channeled correctly, AI and automation have the potential to increase prosperity and productivity in certain areas while allowing humans to focus on other sorts of productivity and what they want to focus on. And none of this is to underplay the job loss. I'm a college student with an uncertain career path. I certainly don't feel good on a personal level about AI replacing some of the things that I could one day do. But at the same time, it's a tool, and it's a tool that we should utilize to make our lives better rather than trying to stop it and halt technological progress. As I argued in the essay, and I brought up a number of examples, fighting technological progress over the years has never been a good policy. In the past, this country has embraced progress, and we should continue to do so.
Why don't you tell us about some of those examples? Because I was about to ask you about that. The essay draws on a lot of similar episodes in American history where we've seen panic over new technologies and new innovations, and then generally it works out well for everyone in the end. Why, tell us about some of the other episodes in American history that illustrate how the market can fix this problem and how we can make it through it?
Well, the labor market is always transforming. In, I believe it was 1880, almost half of Americans, maybe more than half, so somewhere around half of Americans worked in agriculture. Now it is around 10% of the US economy. And in a centrally planned and protectionist system, we would be trying to preserve those jobs. You would say, let's put price floors on wheat so that people can grow wheat and be profitable, and we can employ more people by producing wheat. Instead, we did not do that, and less people work in agriculture than they did 100, 150 years ago. And now those jobs are not gone. They are input product in a productive way into other sectors. That's one example. Of course, AI, the scale of it is hard to know for sure at this time. It has the potential to be much larger than these changes in the past, but I still think that we cannot prevent this progress. Other smaller examples include cars. You've got the classic saying of, if you asked people before the invention of cars, what do you need? They would say, we need faster horses. And that destroyed a lot of jobs when horse and buggies went away. Candle makers lost a lot of jobs with electricity. And I mean, I could go on. There's always going to be innovations, and embracing them is the best thing we can do.
There's a sentence in the essay that caught my eye, and let me look and make sure that I'm getting it right. You write, America could be primed to benefit disproportionately from artificial intelligence's tremendous potential. Why don't you elaborate on that a bit for us? Why do you think America is in a uniquely auspicious kind of position to enjoy the benefits of AI compared to other countries?
Well, the first reason would just be how strong the American tech sector is. We've seen recently a lot of investment in AI. I think it was yesterday or the day before that we saw NVIDIA pledging $100 billion investment in OpenAI. And that's one of many examples. And the Trump administration has, at least to a large extent, embraced this. So we're seeing a good bit of attention given to the area, and we have such a strong tech sector to begin with. We have some of the best AI researchers, AI engineers, people working on this topic. And so I'm very optimistic for what that can bring. It stands to bear that some of our labor standards in America, wages, worker safety, et cetera, are higher than most of the world, almost all of the world. And so if we can find a way to increase automation in those sorts of roles, it'll decrease our labor reliance on, for example, China, who's commonly viewed as our main geopolitical rival, and could bring back manufacturing to the US, but just not in the way that we're currently imagining it.
So when we talk about the way the government is approaching this, the way the Trump administration in particular is approaching this, how, if at all, and this is one of the most important questions of this entire debate, do you think AI should be regulated? Should it be regulated at all? Do we need new regulations, new agencies specifically tailored to control it? What kind of approach do you think the government should take?
Well, it absolutely needs to be regulated in some capacity. I think that's almost universally agreed upon. There are certain things that could or can do with AI that Congress is already working on legislation. For example, creating I think deepfake videos, so realistic looking videos of people's family members, people they know. That obviously can cause confusion, problems, scams. There are things that AI can do that we should attempt to make illegal and regulate. My main point is about the economic regulation and productivity. I don't think we should be aiming to limit the prosperity that AI can bring, though we should absolutely be controlling it and ensuring that it's used as a tool for improving human living standards and not as a tool for malicious intent or crimes, frankly.
What do you think about, how do you feel about the way America's political parties have spoken about, or how they've spoken about addressing and what their plans might be for AI right now? Do you think any of them have responded to it in the right way, or do you think either party is taking a particularly encouraging stance on this issue, or does it seem to you like neither of them have really figured out how to respond to it yet?
Well, the last part of what you said is definitely the closest thing to the truth. There's a lot of disagreement within both parties. I referenced this in the essay with certain Democratic lawmakers trying to regulate AI, saying workers need to have full control over how AI is used in businesses so that they are not replaced. There are also Republican lawmakers, in particular Senator Josh Hawley, who are concerned about a very similar message. And it's a issue with bipartisan agreement and disagreement. I think that you can find that Senator Josh Hawley and certain Democratic lawmakers agree on it a lot more than they agree with members of their own party who may be more in favor of letting AI be unleashed and on the economy and promoting the prosperity that can come with that. So no party has a clear platform on it. And that does create a window for potential bipartisan work on AI, which I'm very interested to see how that evolves in the coming years.
Your essay is very gung-ho about AI as a whole, very enthusiastic. Do you have any worries or reservations about the AI boom and the impact it might have, or are you fully optimistic and enthusiastic about everything that's coming?
Well, I think I got into this a bit earlier. I am absolutely concerned for AI's impact on the labor market and the lives of people like myself and my generation who are going to be trying to navigate this for the first time in since the advent of the technology. That said, I am optimistic on the broad scale impact of AI and the potential that it has to just transform the economy in a way that gives humans more freedom, more ability to live as they want to live, higher living standards. The macro impacts I am optimistic about. The micro impacts, the impacts that it has on the lives of people who are displaced by it, who cannot find jobs because of it, in the short term, much more of a concern. And that's not going to be easy to navigate. History tells us that the best way to navigate it is to let the free and open market have natural technological progress rather than trying to constrain it at a governmental level.
We'll try to take some questions from the audience here as well, and people should please feel free to submit them. We'll get to as many as we can. Peter Trathers asks a very thoughtful question here. He says, your anti-Luddites case, James, is excellent and on point. There's no question that we will all work differently and be wealthier with the AI tool set. But how do you think these overwhelmingly powerful tools will affect Americans in their effort to develop healthy communities? He says this is a classic conservative interest. Also, how, if at all, do you think AI will affect our ability to keep our Constitution?
Well, the Constitution question is a bit, I don't think I can answer that. I think that is a question of political stability. And in order to have political stability, you have to have a healthy economy, employment. People have to be leading good lives. And if we can maintain that, minimize social upheaval as a result of the economic consequences of AI, I'm optimistic for the preservation of the Constitution. As for how it impacts communities, I do think that if human productivity is increased as a result of AI, people may be able to focus more on community, family, those sorts of priorities. I'm not going to theorize about the work week and whether or not people will be working less in the future, because I think nobody can know that. But it is certainly the case that a lot of prominent AI researchers and policy thinkers believe that it is going to result eventually in more time for other priorities for people, which could be very beneficial to that cause. One major concern of AI with regards to communities is the worker displacement aspect, with people potentially having to move in order to find work, and that will take people out of towns that they may have grown up in and wanted to stay in. And it is an unfortunate but inevitable consequence of technological progress, in my view. I hope I answered that question. Maybe you were thinking of a different angle of community, but I'm thinking of the time and resources that people are able to invest into it.
No, I think you certainly did. I mean, something else I was curious about related to that is the essay is very much an argument for creative destruction, which I am sympathetic to as a more classically liberal or libertarian-minded conservative. But other people who are more strongly traditionalist or socially conservative might be might be more hesitant about embracing that kind of thinking, or might characterize it as idealistic to say that we should just embrace this sort of new technological change with open arms and think that it'll have broadly positive results. How would you characterize your essay on the conservative spectrum, I guess? Where do you think
Hmm.
it sits in the conservative worldview or the framework of American conservatism?
That's an interesting one. It's a very good question. I would say the arguments are certainly have a libertarian bent as opposed to a more, I'm not even sure what the alternative would be. It's a libertarian leaning essay. I think there's no question about that, with the advocacy for the free market and trusting humans and businesses to advance human prosperity. As for I don't think it is an essay against the other branches of conservatism that may arise. I think that communities, which was the focus of the last question, are benefited by having the material resources to thrive and lead good lives. It's been shown that, if you have communities with more economic prosperity, you're going to have lower crime, you're going to have higher general happiness and contentedness, most likely. You're going to have the other source of social stability that comes from economic security. People are going to be less inclined to, I guess one way to phrase it would be antisocial activity, but I'm just thinking of crime here. And that is something that I think could be tremendously beneficial to the sorts of communities that conservatives value and want to build in America.
We have another question here from an anonymous listener or viewer who asks, productivity gains from new technology have proven hard to predict. How long do you think it will be before we have an idea on what sort of productivity gains AI will bring?
Well, I think we'll know for sure when they happen and not until then. I tried to say earlier in this that I don't know the full extent of AI. I'm trusting the industry standard. I've got AI researchers at my university and things I've researched online that seem to indicate it will displace white collar jobs first, white collar entry level certainly, and where it can go from there, I don't know. We'll know when it happens. A lot of this is highly experimental. I don't think the people that are building AI know all of the potential implications of AI either. I think we have to give the tools are being made. Those tools are going to be given to the business world, and it'll be up to the business world to find the best uses for them.
We talked a bit earlier about how America's politicians and political parties are responding to the rise of AI and whether any of them are getting it quite right at present. Looking more globally and at other countries and places around the world, do you think any country right now is approaching AI in the right way, talking about it in the right way, or giving us any kind of positive example of how we should think about it? Or is everyone still struggling with this because it's so new and so unpredictable at present?
Well, I would say that with current policy, we're doing an excellent job. I think this is the best world standard. The main other country that is really aggressively going for AI development in the way that our private sector is China. And of course, there it's private sector, but heavily influenced by the government, funded by the government, supported by the government in every possible way, because they view that as a national initiative that can give them an edge over the United States. So, and I do not think we should be doing their model of how they approach it, to say the least, involving the state and controlling AI, which is inevitably what the Chinese Communist Party is going to try to do, is a counterproductive way of approaching any technological development.
We're getting close to the end here. Unfortunately, we could do this for hours, I'm sure. But an interesting thing I wanted to ask you that might be a good place for us to end on is a bit more personal. You don't really go into this in the essay, but you're currently in college, Washington and Lee, very good liberal arts school, of course. And there's been a lot of chatter uh, among in American political commentary and so on about how AI is affecting classrooms and how AI is affecting the high school experience, the college experience, young people, whether it's going to have a positive effect on education or a more deleterious kind of effect on education as young people use it as a way to cheat instead of actually learning and what this might mean. How have you seen, what kind of influence has AI had on your campus and on your own education? And how are you thinking about that? How do you think it will affect education? Are you optimistic? Do you think there are some concerns that need to be addressed? What are things looking like on the ground right now?
Well, that is a fantastic question because for some reason, universities and high schools were fairly slow to respond to the initial AI models that came out when I was near the end of my time in high school. And at the time, it was just something that English teachers and other teachers worried about as a tool for cheating, in particular essays. Essay writing is something that a lot of no high schoolers are notoriously, well, not good at, but they also hate it. And so certainly, that was a major concern at the time, but there has been, from at least my perspective, a shift recently. Almost all of my professors this semester, as a junior at Washington and Lee, have AI policies in the syllabus that allow us to use AI in limited capacity. And they spell out quite clearly what AI can and cannot be used for. One professor I have has fully embraced it and tells students to use any type of AI they want for everything they possibly can, which I don't think that's the approach I would take if I was a professor, but nonetheless, he certainly has a forward-thinking view. He views AI as a tool that students need to learn how to use if they're going to be competitive in the world that we're going to graduate into. And so there's a shift going on. It varies by professor, it varies by school. It is a tool that people can use to cheat themselves out of an education. I think they're doing themselves a massive disservice in that case. But I think that learning how to use the various capabilities of AI, and particularly agentic AI, and that can get a bit harder to actually use at the moment. So learning those skills can be crucial for our education system, including our higher education system, to send people into the world fully prepared for what they're going to face.
Well, it's 3:30. I think that's about all we have time for, but thank you for this, James. This was a lot
Thank
of
you.
fun and very informative. The essay is fantastic. I highly encourage, of course, everyone listening and watching who hasn't already read it to read it on National Review Online. The essay is called AI Will Destroy Entire Industries, and That's a Good Thing. It's a great piece of writing, and congratulations again on winning the competition. It's a very impressive accomplishment.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here.
Congratulations, James, and thank you everybody for joining our Buckley Essay Contest winner webinar. So feel free to check out our website for upcoming events. I typed it in the chat below. And we'd love to hear your feedback on the webinar and any suggestions you may have for future topics to cover among students in our essay contest and also for on-campus events. You can send your thoughts to me at alexander.norton@nrinstitute.org. That's alexander.norton@nrinstitute.org. Thank you again for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon. Bye.